lately, there has been much ado about a New York Assembly bill that appears to, and rightly so, the appearance is more than telling, it's a reality, but this New York Assembly bill appears to grant the governor the ability to criminalize, for lack of better terminology, illness. So I want to share this bill with you. So you can see right here, it's Assembly Bill A99. You can see here under actions, it was reintroduced January 8th of 2020, and then initially in January 9th of 2019. It's showing here that it has now also been, it was also introduced in 2015, 2017, and now again it's been introduced in 2021. So why is this important? Why am I bringing this up? A lot of the to-do and scuttle and everything that's been going on surrounding this bill has been almost exclusively focused on the idea, right or wrong, that this bill was introduced in 2020 by the New York Assembly to grant the powers, and we're going to talk about some of this here in a few minutes, to grant these powers to the governor in relationship specifically to the current viral pandemic that the United States and New York in particular are suffering from. What I want to correct is that misapprehension or that misconception that this was strictly for the current viral pandemic. As I showed here, this was introduced in January of 2019 and had several other introductions going back, as best as I could tell, actually even further back than this. However, that history of being introduced to the New York Assembly, or versions of it that were introduced to the New York Assembly, shouldn't cause us to say, oh, well, this is normal or this is normative. It is normative. It has become a pattern, if you will, but the problem, the thing that we should be focusing on is that this has been coming, it's been getting shot at the people of New York, and let's be honest, a lot of what happens in New York State tends to bleed into all of the United States, just like a lot of what happens in California tends to bleed into much of the United States as a whole. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to focus on, was this directed at the current viral pandemic, and is this a power grab by Governor Cuomo or anybody else? It is. It's a power grab. It's a power grab by anybody. And the language is very much directed not at the governor, but to grant the governor powers that he shouldn't have. So let's do a little periphery reading. It was, and this is an act to amend the public health law in relation to the removal of cases, contacts, and carriers of communicable diseases who are potentially dangerous to the public health. Now, this is incredibly troubling. Any communicable disease that you may or may not have, but would allow you or cause you to be potentially dangerous to the public health. This is what this pertains to, all right? So let's do a little bit more reading, and I'm not going to read the whole bill, the whole proposal as is. We're going to focus on a couple of different parts, but the people of the state of New York, represented in the Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, the public health law is amended by adding a new section, 2120, to read as follows. A removal and detention of cases, contacts, and carriers who are or may be a danger to the public health. The provisions of this section shall be utilized in the event that the governor declares a state of health emergency due to an epidemic of any communicable disease. Upon determining by clear and convincing evidence that the health of others is or may be endangered by a case, contact, or carrier, or suspected case, suspected contact, or suspected carrier of a contagious disease that, in the opinion of the governor, after consultation with the commissioner, may pose an imminent and significant threat to the public health, resulting in severe morbidity or high mortality, the governor or his or her delegee, including but not limited to the commissioners or the heads of local health departments, may order the removal and or detention of such a person or a group of such persons by issuing a single order, identifying such persons either by name or by a reasonably specific description of the individuals or group being detained. Such person or group of persons shall be detained in a medical facility or other appropriate facility or premises designated by the governor or his or her delegee in complying with subdivision 5 of this section. What this bill for New York would effectively do is criminalize you being sick with something that they have decided could cause high morbidity or severe morbidity or high mortality. And once again, let's remember, as New York and California go, so go the rest of the United States more often than not. There's an old joke in Christian circles that fundamentalist Baptists are always 20 years behind culture. So what's okay today in culture, the fundamentalist Baptists would never do. 20 years from now, fundamentalist Baptists will be doing what culture is doing today, and culture will be looking at the fundamentalists and thinking that they're a bunch of fuddy-duddies for doing what they're doing or how they do it. That's how things go in the United States. Wherever New York and California are, the rest of the country will be within 20 years, if not sooner. And we have to remember this. This is paramount. And why do I say that? Because this is setting a precedence that's absolutely impossible for us to miss. This is absolute, and more than that, it's important that we not miss it. You have to literally close your eyes, plug your nose, and plug your ears to not see what the implications are in this. A person or group removed or detained by order of the governor or his or her delegee pursuant to subdivision 2 of this section shall be, detained for such a period in such a manner as the department may direct in accordance with this section. Now remember, it says in a medical facility or in a facility that the professionals deem to be sufficient. There's no warrant for your arrest. There's no order for detention other than the fact that you might be ill or have had contact with someone who might be ill, and you might be a carrier of a disease that they have determined would be dangerous to society. Due process is gone here. This is an arrest. Now, the reason they're not calling it an arrest is because they're not involving law enforcement, but what they are doing is they're granting to health departments and others law enforcement level powers. They get to come to your house, knock on your door, and say, we have this order from a designee or a delegee of the governor to come into your home and take you and remove you because you have SARS. You have this potentially dangerous virus running through your system. Or we think you might have because you've had contact. Now, do you know why contact tracing is so dangerous, people? This is a framework they're working with here. Now, here's their parameters. Notwithstanding any inconsistent provision of this section, a confirmed case or a carrier who is detained pursuant to subdivision 2 of this section shall not continue to be detained after the department determines that such a person is no longer contagious. Notice, the department gets to make that determination. It doesn't say anything about a scientific or medical standard. It's the department makes that determination. A suspected case or suspended carrier who is detained pursuant to subdivision 2 of this section shall not continue to be detained after the department determines, with the exercise of due diligence, that such a person is not infected with or has not been exposed to such a disease, or if infected with or exposed to such a disease, no longer is or will become contagious. There again, very random, very arbitrary, very amorphous, very subjective. A person who is detained pursuant to subdivision 2 of this section as a contact of a confirmed case or a carrier shall not continue to be detained after the department determines that the person is not infected with the disease or that such a contact no longer presents a potential danger to the health of others. Do you see how subjective this is? This is what we're allowing to happen in the United States, people. This is arrest without warrant. This is what it is. Arrest without warrant for the good of the public health in the case of a health emergency. A person who is detained pursuant to subdivision 2 of this section as a contact of a suspected case shall not continue to be detained after, okay, I could go on and on. But what this comes down to is they give a certain period of time. You can be detained for up to 3 days. Then you have to be brought before a judge, or they have to have a compelling reason over and over and over again as to why you need to be continued in detention. And that's what a detention, detained, detention, confinement, suitable place, medical facility, or some other place. This is imprisoning people without committing a crime for nothing more than the fact that they had the audacity to have contact with someone who was ill, or maybe showed some signs that they were ill themselves. No due process, no crime is committed. And here's the bigger problem. In this, it goes on and it says that this can last for months. Months. I want to say it's at some point 60 to 90 days. Here. In addition, an order issued pursuant to subdivisions 2 and 7 of this section requiring the detention of a person or group for a period exceeding 3 business days shall advise a person or group being detained that the detention shall not continue for more than 5 business days after a request for a release has been made in the absence of a court order. Notice, you don't have to be detained by a court order. This is just an order from a health department official as they've been designated by the governor. Okay? This should terrify you people in New York. This should terrify you American people. Okay? Period. In the absence of a court order, advise the person or group being detained that the detention shall not continue for more than 5 business days after a request for release has been made. You can request it, but that doesn't mean it has to be granted. Advise the person or group being detained that whether or not they request release from detention, the governor or his or her delegee must obtain a court order authorizing detention within 60 days. 60 days. Within 60 days. In other words, they can hold you for up to 60 days before that order for detention is ever brought to you or brought before a judge and authorized. Now catch this. Following the commencement of detention and thereafter must further seek court review of the detention within 90 days of such court order and within 90 days of such subsequent court review. They have up to 60 days to get the court order, and then they have 90 days after that. Is this registering with you yet? That's 150 days that you can be detained for nothing more than having a virus that they have determined could be dangerous. Advise a person or group being detained that they have the right to request that legal counsel be provided, that upon such request, counsel shall be provided if and to the extent possible under the circumstances, and that if counsel is so provided that such counsel will be notified that the person or group has requested legal representation. A person who is detained in a medical facility or other appropriate facility or premises shall not conduct himself or herself in a disorderly manner and shall not leave or attempt to leave such facility or premises until he or she is discharged pursuant to this section. This is Marxism, people. This is Marxism. This is pure, unadulterated, fascist, authoritarian Marxism, period. This is authoritarianism. This is what you're dealing with. Now, has this passed yet? Not that I'm aware of, but it has been reintroduced, and it was reintroduced just for 2021. I showed you that at the beginning of this video. Now that they've got people terrified of the current viral pandemic that's happening, there could be, because we've seen it over and over and over again. Oh, Governor, grant us masks. Oh, or order us to wear masks. Governor, order us to stay home. Governor, order the gyms closed. Governor, order the bars closed. Order the restaurants closed. Governor, order small businesses closed. You've got to protect us. Pretty soon, the drumbeat of fear is going to cause people in New York, and then domino-like effect through other states. Governor, legislators, senator, representative, please pass this legislation. Make us safe. Detain people. You have to remove them from their homes. They're not listening to orders. You've got to do something with them. These people are dangerous. They've got to be put someplace where they can be away. And what's their crime? Having contact with somebody who might have had contact with somebody who maybe was testing positive for a virus that has a 99.9% survival rate. Yeah, but what about the long-term effects? What about the long-term effects of heart disease? What about the long-term effects of diabetes? What about the long-term effects of your fat body not taking care of itself? Where do we draw the line? This bill, presented over and over and over in New York, is an example of what old military types would tell you is the onslaught of inexhaustible resources. It's what the Soviet Union did when fighting Germany. They just kept throwing wall after wall after wall after wall after wall of pawns, of Soviet citizens at the Germans until the Germans just got exhausted and couldn't fight anymore. They didn't care how many of their own people they killed to defeat Germany. They just kept throwing people at it. And that's what they're doing here, except now they've built up fear over the current viral epidemic, and they're throwing that fear at you, and now they're going to keep shooting legislation like this at the body, the assembly in New York, and it's going to spread to other states. Mark my words. You need to be aware that this kind of crap is happening. Check at your state level. Check to see what they're going to allow your governor to do. Check to see what legislation is being proposed. Stay on top of it. If you see stuff like this, you need to fight this. This is criminal. This violates everything about the Constitution. You have a right to have a valid warrant. You cannot be detained for not committing a crime. This is terrifying. This violates everything about the Constitution. And this is how wars happen. This is how shooting wars happen. All it's going to take is one person to be so pissed off that when the health department shows up to take them into custody, if something like this were to pass, and not law enforcement, but the health department shows up to take you into custody, to detain you for your good and the good of the community so that you don't make anybody sick, somebody's going to say, I've had it. I'm not going to put up with it anymore. And they're going to shoot somebody. And we don't need that. We don't want that. But I think the powers that be are prepared for it and might be pulling the strings to make sure it happens. You need to defy tyrants. You need to rise up, and you need to remind them who they work for and why stuff like this is not going to fly. Sic Semper Tyrannis.